So we have Friday, 5 weeks in the books. Web design. We are getting started on WordPress. And students did a nice job of that. We did not get to server access, but we will next Friday. And we'll talk a little bit more about HTML and cascading style sheets next Friday. You know that there's some real value that we talked a little bit about creating your own site. Just a little review. If you remember, you can write your own HTML using cascading style sheets, and then maybe a little JavaScript or some other scripting languages to develop your own unique site. Maybe that's one of the reasons. You know, here you can create your own unique site, not using any other method to do that. There's some value why we do it. There's value in learning this so you better understand it, because this is how the web works, not just building a website, but the concept. And then we talked a little bit about distinguishing between designing and building and doing all that work than actually publishing, making it available to the public. Content management system, WordPress, available, helps you design, help's available, there are templates, there are a lot of resources, and it's well known. I don't know if it's what the current data, if a third of the websites out there use that or not, but even the professionals will use something like that to build the sites, and then if they know enough here, they can manage this to look more unique or better fit their needs. We did a little bit of work as far as identifying sites. So one thing we did, I talked a little bit about, we did a search on PuTTY, open source software, and we found different locations to find PuTTY, but then we settled in, we said, well, the one that was, here, let me back up on that a little bit. Let me use black. So what we found was putty.org was what we wanted, and we downloaded the executable. Let's define that a little bit. Open source. When we code programs, when people write software, design software, they write it in a programming language, and that's called source code. That's compiled in the executable code. This is what the computer uses. Okay? So, like, for example, PuTTY, we could download the executable code, or you could download the source, and since it's open source, you can change and adjust it. Okay? Pretty cool. Then we looked up what's my IP, and in both of these cases, they took us to a site that wasn't the key site where you get the information. So other sites will use these items that are used a lot, like PuTTY, what's my IP, and then they'll get the information from the original site, but then they'll do this in order to be able to have some ads here, or some clickbait here, or whatever. Maybe even an ad here, or maybe even a pop-up ad. Okay. What my IP, this is the place where it's kept. American Registry of Internet Names, I'd have to look that up, but Aaron.net is for North America. American Registry of Internet, anyway. So, there's some newsletters you can subscribe to get more information, and then we talked about the World Wide Web uses the internet. The internet is more than the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web uses the internet, and then we mentioned a little bit about the good and the bad. And for us, we, even though there's only a few of us, but we can at least start working on making a better web, a better place for the world. I like to talk about these. Anyway, we talked about change, we talked about grit. This came up in evaluating websites too, you know. Are people capable of changing? Is it a generational thing? Is it an age thing? Or is it a belief thing? You know, is somebody attacking your beliefs? And we look for information that matches our beliefs. So sometimes it's hard for us, if nothing else, to at least be open to change. At least being open to change. So some people that are very grade-driven and task-driven maybe think a little bit about focusing on knowledge and tying these together. What I worry about is you become so grade and task-driven that this gets ignored and you're not actually learning as much as you could learn. Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning is a group here on campus that teachers work on that. And then a lot of good comments about drive. They were good, where we talk about people tend to want to master something. They want to do it in their own time and space and with the people they want to do it with. And to master something, you got to feel like there's some purpose. And it's, of course, drive. Dan Pink, he has a book called Drive. So if you're interested in it, it's a good book. If you get the audio book, Dan reads it, which makes it extra good. You actually hear the author talking about it. So we talked about some of these things. You know, you got to see the purpose in what you're working on in school. Hopefully there's some autonomy in how you approach learning, and then you work at learning in order to master it. He mentioned, you know, we talked about rewards, and this was really a lot about intrinsic motivating you intrinsically. Sorry about that. You know, people who work for, you know, money, and they say money is the motivation. Well, if you're not getting paid enough, it's hard to bring value and other things to the work, even though you still should. But in today's world, it's so much more about cognitively what you can do. You actually do the learning. I, as a teacher, I try to help. I'm not sure what I was talking about here. I was talking about CEOs. These CEOs get a bad rap sometimes. Yeah, there's probably some greedy CEOs out there, but there are a lot of them that aren't. Okay? They're just not. I can tell you a lot of stuff I've read and researched and so forth. How much one way or another, I don't know. But they used to talk about, you know, your shareholders. That was number one. And profit, you know, the best profits for the shareholders was their responsibility. Now they have a whole list of things that they're working on in terms of, it's not only the shareholders, but what do the customers gain? What kind of value are you bringing back to the environment with your business, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it goes beyond just the money. And that was at a big CEO meeting just this year. So I can try to find some of that information. Well, that's it for this week. Remember to get into the curriculum. I would say, you know, for sure, Monday and Tuesday, see where you're at. I think, you know, check when things are due and keep up with your outline and so forth for the course. And let me know if you have questions.